Southern blueberry dumplings are an easy and delicious way to satisfy a craving for pie or cobbler when you don't want to wait. I know almost all of you will know what a pie or cobbler is, fruit filling with crust that's baked in the oven. However, dumplings aren't as well known. They're definitely an old school, old fashioned southern dessert recipe, and now I'm happy I can share it. Basically, instead of cooking everything in the oven, when you're making dumplings, you cook the fruit on the stove and then you make dough on the side, and then you cut the dough into pieces and add it to the fruit while it cooks, and that way the dough cooks within the fruit. I know you might be thinking, I don't know if that'll be good, and I was a little hesitant at first, but I had blackberry dumplings and they were incredible. I was expecting the dough to be soggy or rubbery because it was boiled, but even though it was not like a pie crust, it was still very good. It had a very good flavor and very good texture. So like I said, I want to share this dumpling recipe with you. First off, the blueberries, of course. I'm using 16 ounces or 2 cups or 454 grams of frozen wild blueberries. You can use regular blueberries, and if you use fresh, I know they're in season now, you could definitely use those, but frozen fruit, when it's thawed, it releases more juice, so I would freeze it first and then use them in this recipe, just if you want everything to follow my recipe exactly. And then to that, and these berries, unlike with the pie, they're still frozen. I'm going to cook them so they'll thaw that way. I'm adding 3/4 of a cup of sugar as I measure 160 grams, an eighth of a teaspoon of salt, and I have a cup of water, but I'll probably add 3/4 of a cup. I'll talk about that later. For the dumplings, the dough, you could do a lot of things. You could do pie crust, you could do biscuits. If you use store-bought pie crust or canned biscuits, it's really easy. But I'm going to do a combination of what I do for my chicken and dumplings, which I'll share in the near future, and the strawberry cake cobbler. If you haven't seen that, make sure you take a look. The dough for the dumplings that I'm going to use consists of, if you have self-rising flour, use half a cup of self-rising. If not, like me, half a cup of all-purpose flour, as I measure 75 grams, along with 3/4 of a cup of, or excuse me, 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, to which I'm going to add a 1/4 cup or 50 grams of sugar. Most southern blueberry dumpling recipes, they don't have sugar in the dough or very little, but I really liked the strawberry cobbler cake, how the dough was sweet, so I'm adding a little bit. I'm also adding 2 tablespoons of melted butter and a 1/4 cup of milk. I'm using skim. I've used whole in the past. Honestly, I think you could probably even use water. And I'm also going to add half a teaspoon of vanilla to the dough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to melt the butter and then get the dough ready, and then I'm going to start cooking the fruit. As you can see, I just melted my butter. Took about 40-45 seconds. I turned the heat on the blueberries. It's on low, 2 out of 6. So I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of water for now. While that is starting to thaw, I'm going to make the batter for the dumplings. So literally just add the melted butter, the milk, the sugar, and the vanilla. And like I said, I did add some water. With this so you can see. I did add some water to the berries, and I'm going to add a little more. You might be asking, why did you do that? I did that because it's not a pie. I know you're probably thinking, Parnell, why did you add water to the berries? You didn't do that with the pie. But the thing is that with the pie, it has a top crust. So when the fruit filling cooks, not very much of the steam can escape, so not much of the water evaporates. However, with this, since it's not covered, a lot of the water is going to evaporate. And if it evaporates and it's just the blueberries, then what's going to happen is that the blueberries are going to start to stick to the bottom and they're going to burn. No, I'm actually going to add a little bit more, so we'll say half a cup total for now. I'm going to add the salt. I'm going to stir this just to get the process going so everything's thawing. And then once everything is pretty much thawed, I am going to drop in my dough. It's been maybe a minute. It's still fairly cold in there, but it is defrosting. I'm going to add another quarter cup of water. So we'll say 3/4 of a cup total. Now I'm going to add the sugar, 3/4 of a cup. I'm going to mix that all together. And once this blueberry mixture starts to boil, I am going to add the dumplings. And as you can see, it's a fairly wet dough, so I can't roll it out. If you're using pie crust, you can, but this you cannot. So I'm going to put it on my spoon and drop it in. Super simple. I actually turn the heat up to high just for a few minutes. As you can see, it's starting to boil now. You can see the bubbles are on the edge. So I'm just going to give it a little stir. I did stir it intermittently. No problems with stickage. Now that the heat is on medium, 3 out of 6, it's time to add the dumpling dough. So like I said, this is not pie crust, so I'm going to drop it in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. Basically, half of my teaspoon, I'm rounding the dough on a half of the teaspoon. It's probably 1 teaspoon, but since it's mounted like that, it looks like it's half. I'm just going to take it like that and drop it into the blueberries. I like smaller dumplings. A lot of people do tablespoons, but I like them to be smaller like this. If you do make them larger, then they're going to take longer to cook. But honestly, I don't think there's a wrong way to do this. If they're bigger, then like I said, they're going to have to cook longer and the blueberries might break down a bit more, but that's no big deal. Also, you may notice that there is no lemon juice in this. I feel like stovetop dumplings like this, I'm going to keep it, I'll keep it on medium. Stovetop dumplings like this, what's the way to say this? I feel like lemon needs time for the heat to do its magic. Because if you taste my pie filling right after I add the lemon juice, you're probably going to say, Parnell, this is going to be too tart. I don't like this. But once the pie bakes, the time and the heat mellows out the sourness a lot. And these dumplings, they don't take long to cook at all, maybe 10-15 minutes. And I don't think it's enough time for that lemon to really mellow out and even zest. It doesn't have enough time for the oils to really filter in with everything. That's one of the reasons why the Argentine rice pudding, you can taste the lemon because it cooks for over half an hour. But I feel like it's not quite as strong as it could be because it doesn't cook for an hour, shall we say. That's why with this southern blueberry cobbler recipe, I think you should just keep it simple. I mean, if you want to add some cinnamon or if you really want to add some lemon, you can. But I think these dumplings, they are meant to showcase the fruit in a really quick and easy way, quick and easy recipe. And I just think adding a ton of other things besides sugar will just cover up the flavor. And like I said, it doesn't have enough time for everything to really come together. I'm going to start timing it now because almost all the dough is in. So yeah, I think you just keep it simple and not add a lot to it. Once everything is in, I'm going to say it's going to take 10 minutes, and then these will be done, 15 max. It's now been 5 minutes since I set the timer. Like I said, you don't want to stir this a ton, so maybe once a minute around the sides like that, to make sure it doesn't stick. What I've been doing is I've been ladling every so often some of the blueberries and the juice over the dumplings if they look like they're floating on top a bit too much. Like I said earlier, you can use a lot of different types of dumplings. If you want to make this super simple and minimal, as the Argentines would say, quilombo, minimal mess, buy some store-bought pie crust and just cut it into strips and then cut those into smaller pieces and put those in here. I did that with blackberries and it's absolutely delicious. I'm gonna do a video on that at some point, so you'll see how the recipe goes with pie crust. But this is nearing completion and I am excited. It's been about 7 minutes since I set the timer, probably 9 or 10 since I put the first dumplings in, and I think they're actually done. This one broke apart on me. I'm gonna see if I can lift it up and show you. You know that it's done when, let's see if I can focus a little bit more. So you know that it is done when you can split one open and it looks puffy, it looks moist, and it doesn't look undone in the middle. These are close. I think they need a couple more minutes, but they're definitely getting there. The timer has now been on for 10 minutes. The heat was on medium, 3 out of 6, and these are done. I'm gonna let them cool down for a few minutes. I did end up adding all of the water, so a cup of water, and I went around the side of the pot towards the end, maybe once every minute, just to make sure it didn't stick. But as you can see, there are blueberries, there's the juice, the syrup, and the dumplings, so this is perfect. It's been about 10 minutes, and now I'm ready to serve my blueberry dumplings made with frozen blueberries. They look absolutely delicious. You can see they're still steaming. They're still hot. I'm really happy with how these turned out. You can see the blueberries, not all of them, some of them did break down, but you do see blueberries. You see the syrup, the juice that's thickened. You see the dumplings. Really, this is how blueberry dumplings should be. You see a little bit of everything in regards to the recipe. Here's up close. Like I said, the blueberries themselves, the blueberry syrup, and the dumplings. Even though it has been 10-15 minutes, it's still really hot, but I am going to add a little bit of ice cream to this, and then I'm going to eat it. Actually, I'll show you one more time before I do that. So yeah, if you are in the mood for cobbler or pie, but you don't want to wait, give blueberry dumplings with frozen blueberries a try. You can do this with blackberries, a lot of different types of fruit. It's really easy, really quick. I know it's very old school, very old fashioned Southern recipe, but it's definitely worth revisiting. As you can see, this Southern blueberry dumplings recipe is just as delicious as it is unique. This is one of those Southern classic dessert recipes that honestly I don't really understand why it isn't more popular. I think the reason why it became less popular is that I imagine this would be really hard to freeze or sell as a convenience food. However, if you do what I did and you use frozen blueberries, your blueberry dumplings will be quick and easy to make. If you don't want to use spoon dumplings like I used, you could use pieces of pie crust, canned biscuits, crescent rolls, a lot of things. Speaking of which, when I make blackberry dumplings, I like to use pie crust and it's absolutely amazing. Stay tuned for that video. One thing I did want to mention is that while I was researching this recipe, Ellen from Ellen's Homemade Delights had a recipe that really inspired me along with the others. So if you don't know Ellen, make sure to check out her channel. She does a lot of really good Southern recipes with excellent explanations. This is the last installment of my red, white, and blue series for July 4th, 2020. I hope you make at least one of these recipes. Your holiday will be unforgettable. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.